One tool that you're going to need if you want to easily access your router is a product called WinBox. You go here to Mikrotik.com, download section, and you'll find the WinBox right here. If you click on it, you can select which computer you have, 32-bit computer, 64-bit computer. And you click on that, it'll download the WinBox for you. Something else you may need in the future is the restore package. In other words, the OS update for your system. Now the router will let you update it just by using the router. But if you ever need to update it manually for some reason, this will be the same place that you go to. And down here, MIPSBE is the package you would download. Notice there's a stable package, there's a testing, there's a long-term. They don't list a long-term, so they're saying their stable package right here is the main package, and download this, you get extra packages. So you make that choice later as to which you want to do. I know it's MIPSBE because you look up here, it says right here, HAP. Up here, these HAPs all have something behind them. At any rate, you have to figure out which router package you need for your router if you ever do a manual update of the operating system. I've seen many complaints on Amazon that there's no manual for the router. That's because the manual is so complex and it changes all the time. This router is constantly being upgraded. I'd say once or twice a month it gets security updates and other updates and fixes. So this is a live system that's always being updated, so you can't give people a paper manual. What you have to do is go here to the Mikrotik.com website, and there all the manuals are located. Here we have a look at their Getting Started page, and if you notice it breaks it into several categories. So there's plenty of information available on these routers. The first time configuration is the next thing we'll look at. And here's the first time configuration. Notice that it takes you through multiple choices here, and it's very well organized to determine an area you may be having problems with. In this video, we're not concerned about configuring the router itself. That will come in the next video. In this video, we're only concerned about how do you get this thing to work when it stops working. It seems to be a common problem. It's happened to me several times. So what you have to do is understand how to reset the router back to factory defaults and how the various passwords work in these conditions. You also need to learn how to back up your work so that you don't lose it if you do end up locking yourself out of the router. So let's get started with this process. There's 4 possible routers you can buy on Amazon. The first one, the HAP Lite, is about $22. This RB941 sells for about $23 on Amazon. It has a single 2.4 megahertz Wi-Fi system, and this meets the requirements of most people that are running on DSL. If you need more Wi-Fi capability, including 5G, then you need to get the RB952, which costs about $48. If you need even more speed, then you can go with the HAP AC2, which costs about $69. If you want to go with the ultimate speed, you can go with the HAP AC3, which costs about $99. But this video will be on using the HAP Lite only, but it's the same operating system, same configuration choices in all 4 routers. Once you complete a factory reset to your router, you have to go in and make sure that your computer is set up properly so it can connect to the router. So go to Change Adapter Options, go to right click, Properties, let's look down here, Properties. You want to make sure Obtain IP address automatically. Once your router is up and running, you're certain that your IP address is automatic. Then what we do is we'll just disable that network adapter for a moment. Then we'll re-enable it, and that'll force it to do an auto configuration. And the router and your computer will be on the same network. At this point, we should be able to go ahead and start up our WinBox and find the router. And if we try to log into the IP address, it fails because the factory defaults don't use these passwords. So first we got to go back to factory defaults, which is admin for the user. And we have to go back to factory default, which is nothing for the password. Now if we try to connect using the IP address, it does in fact connect. Notice you get this message here, default configuration. It's best to accept that for right now, and we'll do that, and we'll cancel that for a moment. Notice you can also go back here and you can access via the MAC address, because the default does enable the MAC servers, all the MAC servers in fact, and that's dangerous. So we'll take care of that in a few moments. So this is how you connect once you've done a factory reset. Before you start making changes to your router, there's two things you must absolutely do, or you will regret it because you lose access to your router. First thing we have to do, let's get in the router first of all. First thing you have to do is back up your system, whatever your current setup is. You need to back it up. Of course, I forgot how to do backups. Where's the backups at? They're down here under Files. Notice I have a backup. My current backup is January the 9th. And I'm going to back up again. So I'll give it a new name. Just say test. And it defaults to being encrypted with the router password. In other words, if you can't access the router, you can't access this file, no matter where it's located. So we're going to do a backup. Notice now we have a test backup. So that's the first step before you make any configuration changes to your router. The second step is to make sure under Tools and Mac Server, make sure this WinBox server is activated. In this case, it's shown in a LAN only. That's what we want, LAN only activation. Because if you do mess up your IP addresses inside the router, you can still get back into the router using your old password and your username. Or if you screw it up, you can't get back to it, then you have to reset the router, which erases your passwords and your usernames and defaults back to the out of the box conditions. You don't want to do that typically if you're just trying to make a few changes. So always do these two steps. Like I say, first you back it up, and then you make sure you have a WinBox Mac server active before you make any changes to your router. I know from experience, if you don't do this, you will regret the results. Okay, so you finally did it. You screwed up. You didn't back up your files, and you didn't make sure your Mac server for the WinBox is enabled. Therefore, now you're locked out. You can't get into your damn router no matter what you do. You can select the MAC address. Nothing happens. Cancel. You can select your router IP address. Try to connect. Nothing happens. So basically, you just in la la land. What you have to do now is restore the router back to factory defaults and then start all over again. From left to right is the power jack, the reset button, the user light, and the power light. So notice when you hold down the reset button, plug in the power until the user light starts to flash, and you let go of the reset button, and that's a power on or restore. In this video, we're going to discuss accessing your router when there's an address mismatch between your computer and the router. So let's go down here and look at my current configuration. Notice settings, come over to select network, come down here and change adapter options. We're going to right click on the, first of all, notice that these over here are VPN networks, have nothing to do with this. Your Ethernet card will be called Ethernet, and this is it here. So I right click on that, do properties. I select IP4, and I click properties button on that. You'll notice that my address, I have a fixed address, and this is it right here. You could click up here and obtain an address from the router, but I'm trying to demonstrate something right now, so I'm using this address, and there's a reason, and find out later why. So that's my current address. So if I go ahead and I start up WinBox, I try to connect using the IP address of the router, it will fail. It can't do it. And the reason is it's not within the address range. This is 84 group of addresses, and we're on a 74 group of addresses. Therefore, it will not work. So I'm going to cancel that. If I select the MAC address, then it's a different story. He doesn't care what the IP address is of the router or of my computer. So under the MAC address choice up here at the top, notice this is the IP address choice of connection. This is the MAC address choice of connection. This allows me to connect, no problem. And you'll see here that .84 is the address group of the router, and .74 is the address group of the computer. That's why this isn't working except through the MAC address. So let's look at that for a second. So let's go down and look at my tools. You'll find under tools there's MAC servers. There's a telnet server which I have disabled. It says interface allowed is none. There's a ping server I have disabled. That lets people hack in your router easier. There's also a WinBox server which I have that enabled for LAN access only. You don't want WAN to come in because then someone outside could come in and mess with you. So LAN only on this WinBox server is active. And that is what allows me to connect to this router even though my address of my computer is wrong. Now that we have access back to the factory rebooted router, it's time to go in here and restore the backup we made earlier. Remember, we don't have to do all this password crap because we have it already backed up. Fortunately, the factory resets don't disturb the files. They're still there. So what we're going to do is we're going to select our test backup. Remember, we made that before we started mucking around. Then we screwed it up and we couldn't get back in. So now we have to do factory reset. Now here we are going to restore our test backup. So just click on restore. Do you want to restore configuration and reboot? Yes, I do. So at this point, when the backup is finished, then the router restores it just rebooted so that it can come up under the new configuration. Now that I've finished restoring the backup and the router rebooted, I still have issues here because if you remember, the password was admin, the login was admin and the password was blank. And if I try to access MAC address, I can't do it. If I try to access the IP address, I can't do it. There's two reasons I can't do that, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So you have to make sure that your login is proper. It's got to be the right login and the right password. And then if the MAC server is activated, you can connect. And sure enough, it was activated, I could connect. But you notice, even though this login and password are correct, I still cannot connect through the IP address. And there's a reason for this. It's a security reason. Let me show you what that is.